Hey out there, I'm Rain Phoenix. I'm here to share with you that we have a new Patreon page for LaunchLeft. LaunchLeft is a podcast, a label, a launchpad for left-of-center artists. It's an intentional space and an ecosystem to talk about art and activism, to talk about changing the culture and the industry from one of competition to one of kindness and collaboration. And for those of you who've heard the podcast, you know this. We bring on known artists who pick the next great emerging artists and the ones that are a little left of center, the ones that are outside the box, the ones that might not make it to a normal commercial public domain, as it were. And so we're bringing those outside the box thinkers and creators, those who have to create from a space of giving and from a space of passion. And we want to highlight them. So this year in 2020, we launched our label and we released 9 new artists this year, including Alika's Attic. We need your help in continuing to grow our roster and continuing to support our artists through PR and promotion, vinyl production, mastering. There are so many ways that we need some support, and we are hoping that you will join our Patreon page and do this, but not just for the label, also for the podcast, because, hey, what do you think of this idea of us doing like outside acoustic shows? I really like that idea. I mean, I like to play music outside. It's one of my favorite places to be is in nature. So think about that too. It would be super interesting to have shows outside, but guess what that entails? We need equipment, people, manpower. We need to be socially distanced and COVID safe. These are things that require some support. Now, what do you get? Well, check out our Patreon page and you'll find out. I am really excited to share some content that we have shot and kept behind the scenes for this very reason. So become a patron today. Help us launch new artists on LaunchLeft. LaunchLeft podcast. Bring us to August and we'll launch. Hi, welcome to LaunchLeft, an intentional space for art and activism, a podcast, a label, a launchpad for left-of-center artists. My name is Rain Phoenix. Today's guest is Taylor Goldsmith of Dawes. Don't forget to rate and subscribe. Follow us on all socials at LaunchLeft. Hey, you must be Taylor Goldsmith. Hi.
That's me. How's it going?
Good. How are you? Thanks for being on LaunchLeft.
Thanks for having me.
Making a lot of music these days?
Actually, yeah. Normally we put out a record and then we just go straight on tour. And since we can't, the only other thing I know how to do is write songs. So been trying to write more Dawes songs and then also songs for other people. And just it's been nice to just stay on that kick at a time when I thought I would just be playing shows every night.
So your record's out right now. Well, tell me a little bit about the making of that record. I assume it was before quarantine that you actually tracked it. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. And, I think a lot of bands and artists of all kinds considered had to ask that question of whether or not it felt appropriate for it to still come out into the world. And so like when I listened to the record again with that in mind, because we recorded it like May, June of last year, and then we intentionally, because we were still on a record cycle of another album, and so we thought like, well, let's press the pause button, give our fans a break from us, and like maybe wait till around October to put it out, which is what we did, but obviously the rest of the world did too. And then with all this going on, when I listened again through that lens of like, does this still work? Do people want to hear about this? Because, you hear like a great new song about someone who's like talking about a breakup or something, and you're a little bit like, I just don't want to hear this right now. So when I listened again, I was like, I still feel confident. I still feel like this stands up on its own 2 feet. So it kind of took on another dimension to it, and I was happy that it still worked. I hope other people agree. I don't know. Because
of these times, you've made different considerations for how you're going to promote it. Can you tell us a little bit about what you have planned?
Yeah, I memean, we've done some streaming shows. Like we did one on a rooftop, and then now we're gonna try a couple drive-in shows, which I'm excited. I think that's more just for the fans and for us as just people who to have fun. It's not really like it's not an answer to how bands like can survive, but everybody's dealing with that question. But we're just excited to be able to get on stage and play for people, even though they're going to be in their cars. But maybe they'll flash their brights and honk their horn when they particularly like something.
The audience and musician relationship is different. Like the energy is different when it's not just a mass of people there, and they're in their cars. I can't imagine how different that is, because I have yet to play a live show myself, since quarantine. I mean, this past year, 2020, has been a humdinger. How have you managed anxiety and things that have been troubling to you as an artist?
I think I've gotten to a place where I've needed to recognize when I don't have agency over something, and then to back away from it, because, and I don't want to sound like a defeatist, because there's always more that we can do, but there are some points where there isn't more you can do. I remember several years ago where I was refreshing my news feed to see if Kim Jong-un was really going to send the bomb or not, and it's just. Me staying up to date wasn't doing anything for anybody, wasn't helping anybody, especially myself. That level of being informed, doesn't do you a lot of favors. And there's certain things that we all are making decisions constantly as to to what extent we're going to engage. A friend of mine said this to me, and I think I subscribe to this. I don't know. But he was saying, we all, especially if you're a musician or if whatever you do, if it's not devoting your life to the climate, then you don't necessarily have that much agency over climate change, but you're still a participant in it. You're still a person in this world. So figure out what it is you can do, figure out all the things you're willing to do that you can do, get that Tesla if you can, go vegan if you can, or if you want to, whatever it is water conservation, whatever it is that helps you feel like you're contributing. And he's and then do your best to never think about it again. And I know that sounds horrible, but it's just you don't have that much control over this. So of course do everything, but then you have to unplug. And again, I'm just kind of repeating what he said. I don't want anybody to think that that's necessarily like how I think, but it makes a lot of sense. And I find myself in 2020 being there are moments where in order for me to live a healthy life and not to continue to just burden my body with stress and anxiety about things I have no control over, like polling numbers and shit like that. It's I need to tune out and I need to take care of my head. And I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm just this, ambassador for not giving a shit, because that's not how I feel. But I just think that there's you creating some sort of discipline for yourself where you are taking mental health into account is a big deal for me.
Well, I mean, it's such a fine line between that kind of boundaries for your own mental health.
I'm not someone that is on a daily basis having to deal with some of the things that other people have to deal with. So I don't want to say when I say this stuff, I don't mean to make it sound this is just something that we can all or should all do. It's all dependent upon the context of the conversation. And so if it's climate change or something, then that kind of makes a little more sense to me. When it's something like police brutality and Black Lives Matter, that is something that I struggle with a little more, to just be well, I'm just not going to think about it because I need to take care of me. So I'm going to go watch a nice movie. It's a little harder because it's people that I care about and people that don't know and people that I do know are suffering constantly. So it's that gets a little bit hairier. And when you're a band, I can't say that I'm an activist. I can't, that's a hard thing to, it's hard to say that when I feel like I devote, the majority of my energy to playing music. I want to spread the word. I want to donate when I can. I want to make sure that money that we make goes to certain places. But it's at the end of the day, it's I still write a bunch of chords and sing songs about my feelings, So it's tough figuring out where to draw that line of what I'm comfortable with, and I'm still figuring that out. And I'm sure that's something that you never quite fully land on an answer to.
Wouldn't you say, or I would certainly say, that music is a part of activism and what you do with your melody and your progressions, and it's how you express the things that are troubling to you, the anxieties you have, the joys you have. As an artist, that's what we do. We transmute the emotion of the day. It doesn't necessarily mean it's like we're doing a protest song every time, but I do believe that art in its own way is a form of activism.
Like, it's like a molecular activism. Like, if the way that you or I think gets put into a song and it inspires a younger person to like shift their attitude towards a certain subject, then hell yeah. But yeah, when it comes to like the protest song of it all, like that feels a little more like, that feels harder to wrap your head around. Cause like, especially like thinking about a person like Bob Dylan, who like, started his career that way and then eventually, kind of like rejected it. Because it's like, this isn't how it's working. Like, frankly, especially in 2020, I feel like, you're the best thing that we can possibly do is open someone else up to a new way of thinking. And when you give a list of demands, when you say, we need to like acknowledge these communities, or we need rights for so-and-so, or we need like, that is not inviting someone to a conversation. And I wish it was. It seems like it's sort of like you're announcing to the people that already know all this stuff that you're on their team, and you're announcing to the people that disagree with you that you disagree with each other. It's so much harder and so much more nuanced to find people who are engaging in ways that are actually inviting and beckoning people into a conversation. And that's the stuff that like totally flips me out. And that feels like, wow, that you can. There's like a difference being made here, a discernible difference. Even if it's just one person being like, "I hear you and I see you," Like a friend of ours, he's a gay married man who was talking to his Trumper uncle, who they just disagree. They love each other a lot, and after the vice president debate. They called and was like, how do you feel? How do you feel? You know how I feel. You know how I feel. Then our friend was like, well, I'm really scared and I just want to vote for my rights. And then his uncle was like, okay, I will. And it was this like amazing moment for them as relatives. And then he snuck in there like, but it's California. It doesn't matter anyway because Trump's going to lose. But it was just anyway, all I mean is like when I hear that sort of story, that feels like sometimes I wonder if that's making more of a difference than like, an Instagram blurb that I might put up about why it's important to vote.
I'm very much somebody who believes in that kind of like that we have to be able to have conversations. We have to think outside like who agrees with us and find a way to actually have meaningful conversations with people who don't.
And it's also like we're trained by our screens and phones, like it trains us to reduce every person to what we see in a comment section. We like when I hear that someone's voting a certain way, I take it to these I take it to the extremes in my head, and then I talk to like family members of mine. I had an amazing conversation the other day with a cousin of mine who's voting for Donald Trump, and I'm not, and we both know that about each other. And we talked about politics for an hour and a half or something. Did not change each other's minds whatsoever, but it allowed us to see each other's humanity and made me feel so much better. And it's like, if Instagram and Twitter and Facebook just straight up didn't exist, this would be the time that people, this would be the only arena in which people with opposing views would be able to come together. And this is how the conversations would go. They wouldn't get into, you guys are a bunch of like satanic evil demons and they wouldn't go to those places because frankly, people are just like, when you're in someone's face, you're a little more respectful. And so like, I really feel like it's this distance that it creates more division. And it's like, we actually don't disagree as much as we think. And that's another terrifying prospect. Like he was telling me like, I hate to defund the police, but what we should do is address the protections of police unions because they protect these cops too much. And I'm like, dude, you're just explaining defund the police to me. He's like, yeah, but I don't like that. And it's like, okay, I'm not even going to judge that because he probably has reasons I'm not even aware of for not liking it. And the crazy thing was, it wasn't even that we were close. Like we were literally on the same page. It just, we both had different languages in which to communicate it. And that is something that's drilled into us constantly. And it's so fucking scary.
One thing I find interesting is like, it's easy to pit people against each other, right? Like you said, social media, that's basically what it does. It's just a feedback loop of your own people.
It's tough because I feel like we're so like we're like cemented into these ways of thinking. Like you can't, everybody has a brand, everybody has like a certain demographic they're appealing to. Like it would be so rad if there was a community in which people could say fossil fuels are bad. And a lot of people work in those industries and a lot of families depend on that money that's made. Both of these things are true. And let's be let's make our hearts as big as possible to talk about both things at the same time and not waver at all, to continue to talk about people that are like literally like terrified because they're a multi-generational family that like works in a coal mine. And it's like it's so easy, especially as a guy from LA, like it's so easy to be inundated with, can these people not understand that it's ruining our planet? It's like, this is what all they have. And we're acting like it's like, just go get a different job, like at a different supermarket or something. It's like, this is more important than that. And we don't give it the respect it deserves. And if I were to like go on a platform and start like saying this kind of thing, people are like, well, whose side are you on? And all this, and it's a pretty terrifying world when you start to like give too much space for all sides at once. So it's like, that's the thing that like, I love what you're saying, but I also like, I can't see that world right now because of how we're all scared into getting in line with our demographic, and it shouldn't be that way. It wasn't always that way. Even when America was much more of a warring country, we were still able to like see each other as Americans in ways that we just don't now. So that like that's the thing that's the to me like kind of the $1 million question of like for any of what you're saying to be possible, we have to figure out a way where we're not literally crucified by like giving space for opposing opinions and to like just straight up acknowledge them and say that's fair.
There has to be that kind of willingness. You have a willingness to talk through something, but if the other person doesn't, it's a dead end.
And it's also about how you enter into that conversation. Like the way the analogy that I've had, like the way that people are talking to each other through their devices, it's sort of as if you were to come to my house and if you like had a cup of coffee and you just like left it on the kitchen table and like went into the other room. And if I like saw that and came up to you and like, what the fuck is your problem? You're supposed to rinse that out and put it in the dishwasher. How dare you? That would be insane. I would never say that to anybody. I would say like, oh, that's all good. Just so you know, like, whatever. Probably. But so that's like the funny thing about the way we're all communicating. There's none of that allowance for someone else. Like what you were saying about relationships. It's like, there's a difference between saying your piece and saying your piece in order to be heard. One is just simply making an announcement because you have to let it out. And frankly, like that's reasonable. Like we all have that. Like this has to come out. It doesn't matter how mad it makes you. But if there's any eye towards making someone hear you, then that's not how you can communicate. And we continue to not want to like acknowledge that, myself included. I mean, I've gotten in the mud more than I'd care to admit, thanks to my phone and computer, you know?
Yeah, haven't we all? I feel like we covered the question about activism. So I really want to ask you just how music found you before your Launched Artist joins us.
Music found me before I even noticed music. I don't remember music like coming into my life because our dad was so musical. So my earliest memories of music are just singing songs with him in harmony at the piano, and like there was never all those like first grade little essays where it's like, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? There was never any other thing. There was never astronaut or firefighter. It was always like, I'm gonna be a singer because my dad is, and because that's all I know how to do. And so everything was just geared towards that. It was just not ever a decision I even made. It's funny though, because it makes it so that everything else has much more of like a romance to me. Like when I meet someone, they're like, yeah, I'm a journalist. I'm just like, my mind's blown. Or the idea of being a novelist to me is so much cooler than writing songs. Because you, and I'm not claiming I'm like an expert by any means, but because it's like the only thing I know how to do, because I've done it for so long, it sort of gets confused in my brain as not knowing how to do anything just because it's like, well, yeah, that's just song. That's just whatever. That's not that cool. Like, you were a journalist. So like, it's funny how it just like sits in my head as something like, I'm very proud of it, but I also feel like, sometimes I guess I take it for granted.
I think I saw that you're going to be a dad, and this, I'm assuming, is the first time in your life. Are you so excited about that? Have you started writing songs for the baby yet?
Well, actually, a little bit. We've done some like little jokey songs and stuff, and also it's cool to get that question after talking about being a musician, because like I feel like I'm so excited to put that. In the bio line, I'm so excited to put that before musician. I'm so excited to be a dad first, a husband first, and a musician like way down the list. I feel like it's all I've ever wanted, and I'm just so excited.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your songs and melody, and now an artist that we've not heard of, and we're excited that you're here to launch. Christian Lee Hutson, welcome to LaunchLeft.
How's it going?
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Taylor Goldsmith here told us that we should know about you, and we're really excited that he made the recommend. So we wanted to just say hi to you, and I assume you guys know each other. And
see, I thought I was launching you. I didn't know who was gonna be launched or who was launching.
So is it a deal breaker now that you're the one being launched?
I actually have to. I only have 5 minutes left here, so I'm gonna have to jump off.
Well, let's make it count. Your song Northsider. I assume it's part of a record, no?
Yeah, it's a part of my. I guess it's my debut or label debut or whatever. The album's called 𝐵𝐸𝐺𝐼𝑁𝑁𝐸𝑅𝑆. And yeah, Northsiders was the first single on it.
Have you been very productive this year, or are you been under the covers? It depending on who I ask. It can go either way.
I think kind of both. I don't know. I spent like the first 4 months of quarantine like, oh no, I have all this time and I don't know how to write or be creative anymore. And then I got into a little bit of a groove. Now I feel okay about it, but I might be psyching myself out.
How do you all know each other?
Griffin, it's through my brother.
Yeah.
You guys, I don't know how you guys met, but he introduced me to you.
We met through like a Twitter interaction, not through him, but like our mutual friend Dash, who was playing in like Heim at the time, hit me up because he had seen like a video of me playing on YouTube or whatever and asked if I wanted to come record at his house. And I was like, yeah. And then he's like, do you mind if I get like a drummer? And Griff was the drummer. And then that's how Griff and I met. And then awesome. We met through.
Yeah.
That's right. Taylor, you're in a band with your brother. I forgot about that part. That's so cool. I love sibling music. It's like you don't really have to use language.
Yeah, it is. I feel so lucky. He's the best, and we've also just never, he gets it right away, and he knows what to do with it, and there's never been a second thought, which is even when the songs are bad, he's like, I'm down, let's do it. So,
Christian, tell me what hollow body that is behind you, the red one.
This is I actually don't know. It's like a.
Are you in a prop house?
Yeah, I've only been here for a minute, so I couldn't really tell you. No, this is my wife's guitar. It's like a old, like silver tone or something like that.
Oh yeah, look at that. It's beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. It's very tiny. Short scale neck.
Now, do you write on guitar?
Yeah, usually. I mean, sometimes I write on piano because I don't know how to play it as well, and then I'll take it back to the guitar just to kind of come up with something so my fingers aren't falling into familiar places. Will
you do a thing where like you write a song where it's just because for those listeners out there that don't know this, Christian's a phenomenal guitarist, and when you do you start with like a simple progression, like a 4-chord thing, write your melody, write your words, and then you start to kind of invent a big guitar piece around it, or is the involved guitar work kind of like what you start with?
It's different for I'd say like it's pretty like half and half. Like sometimes I'll just write an entire song and then I like need to build like a little world in order for me to, it actually is based around kind of a weakness because I'm not like a very strong singer. So if I don't figure out a way to like build a map of the world that the song exists in, I can't remember the melody that well. So I have to figure out how to play the melody and like move it around so that like, yeah, I'm like following this little road or whatever so I don't fuck it up.
So fascinating, different artists' like how we write. Do songs get beamed to you, or is it always like a process where you sit and you're like, I'm going to write a song?
I feel like, like there are definitely songs that I know they took some time to write, but when they're done, I sort of feel like, wow, I don't know how that got here, and I'm so glad it did. And I wish I knew how to do it so I could do it again, but I don't know how. So that definitely happens, but it's never like, I love those stories of like, you hear like, I remember I told Ben Montinch, the keyboardist in the Heartbreakers, I told him that song Swingin' is so good. And he's like, oh, well, like that version that Tom Petty's band, the version that you're hearing is the second time we ever played it. The first time we played it was the take before when Tom was literally writing it as he was singing it. Like, that's not possible. And he's like, no, that's how Tom did it. He would just start playing a progression and just make up a song. And it would be like, in some cases, really popular songs. So to that extent, I've never experienced automatic writing. But I've definitely done stuff where I thought, like, I don't know how that happened. What about you, Christian? It usually takes like a lot of like messing with it to get it to a place where if I have done anything like that, no one will ever hear it. I like to mess with it until I'm positive that I'm not going to humiliate myself 3 years from now by having someone hear it. But yeah, I wish that I could write like that. I feel like the people that can do that and like are good, like immediately, like just shit out a hit like Tom Petty. It's like people are fucking psychopaths.
Well, I remember hearing a story, and I don't know how I think it's true, that David Bowie would just like write a ton of different lyrics and then piece them together, right? I don't know. There's just so many ways that artists do use their creative to get somewhere. And I love hearing how, because everybody's so different. Yeah,
and it's the definition of songwriting, just like not humiliating yourself.
Exactly. I mean, it's really just, it's dedication. Some people call it pride. It's the name what other people, there are many names for it. So.
Well, can I ask you the question I asked Taylor about music, which is how did music find you?
Music found me going to school with kids that listen to music. My parents didn't listen to any music when I was growing up. Like I feel like the most music that I heard was like shopping at Ross with my mom, like whatever, like 90s R&B hits were playing as we walked the aisles of Ross. And I had no like connection, or I couldn't like connect that was people that made that. It was just like a thing that existed. And then, I went to school with these kids who like started a band, and that was like, they introduced me to like Nirvana and like Blink-182 and like all this like SoCal pop punk stuff that was like popular when I was that age. And that, I don't know, that helped me, that made me like put together in my mind that it was possible that you could like do that.
Did you do lessons or did you teach yourself? How did actually becoming a player or a songwriter come to you?
I did. My friend like taught me some like bar chord, like drop D, like bar chords, and I was like, I just kind of learned from the internet. From there, I like had enough to like write a song or whatever. Like the first week that I started playing guitar, and then from there I like learned off of like tabs and stuff for just songs that I liked, learning other people's songs.
Wow. So you became, as Taylor said, a phenomenal guitarist, but self-taught.
Yeah, I've been told though many times that like I'm gonna like have like really crippling arthritis or something eventually because I'm not like technically.
You finger pick wrong or something?
I did. I somebody like a guitar teacher told me one time I like took like a summer program when I was in high school at Berklee College of Music, and they're like, you're gonna have arthritis when you bring that thumb over when you play the D chord or whatever. You're gonna have arthritis and never play guitar again.
Well, I hope you don't get arthritis, but I'm so grateful to both of you for being on the show and talking about how music found you and the importance of music and art in our lives, and for sharing your amazing music with us here on Launch Left. So thanks for being here.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Taylor. Thanks, Rain.
Hi, I'm Taylor Goldsmith, and the artist that I would like to launch left is Christian Lee Hutson with his song Northsiders.
I was new in town, kinda goth. I met you in the science quad. You asked if I had any pot. We're going up to Mikey's spot, covering important ground. I tried cocaine at my cousin's house. Yeah, I'm probably addicted now. The things that children lie about. I didn't notice it was getting late. You offered me a place to stay. We live up in the Palisades. Tell your folks you ran away. Besides, you're a Northsider now. Nothing's going to change it, pal. We were so pretentious then, didn't trust the government. Said that we were communists and thought that we invented it. Morrissey apologists, amateur psychologists, serial monogamists. We went to different colleges. But you said that we would always be branches on the same old tree, reaching away from each other for eternity. And you know I can't argue with that. Nothing's going to change it now. When I was working in the smoothie shop, but I couldn't get the weekend off. She told me I was getting soft. I read an article about the accident, probably reaching for cigarettes, and missed the brake lights up ahead. I hope it was an instant death. Sometimes I imagine us way down the line, getting fat somewhere in the countryside. It's crazy how things shake out sometimes. But maybe that's enough magic for me. Nothing's going to change it now.
Launch Left aims to create an intentional space that highlights and empowers all artists for whom radical creativity is not a choice, but a necessity. Launch Left begins with music, but its ultimate aim is to launch left-of-center artists in all creative fields.